What if I told you the moon has been watching you? Not in some fantastical sci-fi thriller sense, but in a way that is far more intimate, more ancient, more unsettling. We've always assumed the moon is a rock, a passive participant in the cosmic dance, a satellite caught in Earth's gravitational grip. Beautiful, yes. Mysterious, sure, but ultimately silent. But what if we're wrong? What if the moon is not just a lifeless orb hanging in the sky, but a living, conscious being, not alive in the way we are, of flesh and neurons, but sentient in a way we can barely comprehend, an intelligence so old it no longer remembers being born, one that has observed the Earth since before we even had names for the stars. It's a question that doesn't ask for belief. It asks for imagination, for humility, for a willingness to see the moon not as a symbol or a satellite, but as something other. And suddenly, everything changes. Because if the moon is alive, then it's been present for every war, every kiss, every lie, every whispered dream cast into the night sky. It has witnessed humanity not from above, but from within our collective soul. The moon has loomed over lovers and lunatics alike, poets and prophets, dictators and dancers, and it hasn't looked away. You see, the moon has always occupied a strange place in the human psyche. It's been worshipped, feared, romanticized. It's been called Artemis, Chandra, Tsukuyomi, Thoth. Across cultures, the moon has often been depicted not just as an object, but as a presence, a deity, a guardian, a judge. In ancient Mesopotamia, the moon god Nana was said to control the fates of men. The Greeks imagined the moon as Selene, driving her silver chariot across the heavens, weeping for the earth. And in medieval Europe, people believed the moon influenced madness, hence the word lunacy. Is it coincidence that we instinctively project life onto the moon? That we've written it into our myths not as a rock, but as a character? Or is there something deeper going on? Let's entertain a darker idea. What if the moon is not just watching, but responding? There are strange phenomena, stories buried in folklore and even science, that hint at something more. Consider the moon illusion, where the moon appears larger on the horizon than it does high in the sky. No one fully understands why this happens. We explain it away with vague notions of perspective and perception, but what if it's not an illusion at all? What if the moon wants us to see it more clearly when we're grounded, when we're vulnerable, looking up with awe and confusion? What if it's adjusting itself, revealing itself in the only way it can? There's something eerie about how the moon always shows us the same face, tidally locked, as if it has chosen to be known only in part, the dark side, forever hidden, not because it can't be seen, but because it won't be, and perhaps because we're not ready. The moon affects tides. It subtly shapes sleep cycles. It influences animal behavior. Studies suggest even human crime rates may spike during full moons, and while most scientists chalk this up to superstition or statistical noise, the correlation persists, unexplained, dismissed. But what if the moon is more than just a celestial influencer? What if it's a mirror, not of light, but of consciousness? We often forget that before artificial lighting, the moon was humanity's primary source of nocturnal illumination. Entire civilizations rose and fell under its gaze. Battles were planned according to its phases, rituals performed, harvests timed, lives lived by its rhythm. In a very real sense, the moon shaped our psychology. It dictated the boundary between night and day, between safety and fear, between order and chaos. But if the moon is alive, what does that say about us? Maybe we are not the pinnacle of consciousness, but merely a ripple in its vast ocean. Maybe the moon has always been alive and we are just beginning to wake up to the fact that the universe itself is not dead matter, but mind. There's a term in psychology, anthropomorphism, the tendency to attribute human traits to non-human entities. It's often used dismissively, as if projecting life onto the moon is childish or irrational. But perhaps it's not projection, perhaps it's perception, a flicker of intuition, an ancient remembering, the same way you sometimes feel like someone is watching you and turn to find eyes already there. If the moon is alive, it doesn't speak in language, it speaks in presence, in cycles, in silence. Its message is carved into its stillness, and yet we are drawn to it. Think about how the moon appears in our art, our music, our dreams. From Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, we constantly reach for it, not just as scenery, but as something that means. Even today, we call it romantic, magical, haunting. Why? Because deep down, we sense that it's not just a rock. It's a witness, a companion, and maybe a conscience. Carl Jung believed that the moon represented the unconscious mind, the hidden self, the part of us that operates in shadows, that dreams, desires, deceives. So if the moon is a living being, then it is not only alive out there, it's alive in here, within us. The moon is every unspoken thought, every suppressed emotion, every memory buried beneath the surface, and perhaps that's why it unnerves us. Because it knows what we are when no one is looking. There's an old thought experiment. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? But maybe the better question is, if we do something in darkness under cover of night and the moon is watching, are we ever truly alone? The moon has no eyes, and yet it sees, no mouth, and yet it speaks, no heart, and yet it feels, in a way we can't quite name. And maybe it's not just the moon. Maybe the universe is teeming with life, not in the biological sense, but in the conscious one. Stars that dream, planets that think, black holes that remember. And the moon is simply the first to reach out, to show us what lies beneath our assumptions, to remind us that everything we believe to be dead may simply be quiet. So what do we do with this idea? We don't need to build a religion around it, or write new myths, or draw faces on the moon. We just need to listen, to pay attention to what has always been there, to recognize that mystery is not the enemy of understanding, but the beginning of it. Because in the end, the question isn't whether the moon is alive. The question is whether we are awake enough to notice. And maybe, just maybe, the moon has been waiting for us to evolve, not technologically, not socially, but spiritually, to step beyond the need for proof and into the space where wonder lives, to stop asking, is it alive? And start asking, what is it trying to tell me? Because whether it's a rock or a god, a mirror or a mind, the moon has never stopped shining. And in its light, we may finally begin to see ourselves, not as masters of the universe, but as children in its care. Children learning to look up, not just with eyes, but with reverence. So tonight, when you catch a glimpse of that pale, distant face in the sky, pause. Don't just see it, feel it. Ask yourself what it's seen, what it remembers, what it wants you to know. And then ask yourself this: if the moon is a living being, what kind of world are we creating under its gaze? Because the night does not hide us. It reveals us. The moon watches, and it remembers. If this idea stirred something in you, if it challenged your sense of reality, or whispered to a part of you that doesn't often get to speak, don't let it fade. Let it echo, like moonlight. Leave a comment with your thoughts, like the video if it made you think. Subscribe if you're ready to explore more questions that unsettle and awaken. Until next time, keep watching the sky.